know if you can see me. My name's Miss Sarah. I'm going to show you how to make the bags that are going to be for our foster care students that are from ages around K through 2nd or 3rd grade. So we have this really cute design for a fox bag, and that is the pattern you are going to receive initially. And then today we played around with making some different types of animals. So the ones that you're going to see me sewing on are just a little altered from this, but this one here is the pattern you're going to be getting, and most of the pattern pieces are basically the same. So hopefully that won't be too much of a confusion. And then as we put this together, we'll get you some little pattern hacks so you can make a whole variety of animals. So we're really excited about this. So here's the bag. These hands, as you'll see as we put the pattern together, will come together to make a little holding strap. And how this works is, this is the flap that closes it. The animal's nose is what closes the bag. And you open it up, we have in the front a pocket for putting a journal into, as well as some other things. And then inside, we have, this is a crayon holder up top, and we have a little pouch for other art supplies with darts that's at the bottom. So we chose to do felt for this project, and you'll need at least 3 pieces of felt. And we encourage contrasting colors. What? We're good. Hi, I'm Miss Sarah. I don't know if you can see me. We are here to make these dandy little art and craft bags. They are for our foster care friends, and this bag that we're making is for the K through 2nd or 3rd grade age group. So this is the fox bag. This is the pattern you will be receiving, and it's basically our base pattern. Later on, we're going to be able to give you a couple pattern hacks, so ways that you can take the base pieces and make different animals with it. But you can also just explore and play with that on your own. So, introducing you to the fox. When you're finished pattern, these will be attached with a short piece of fabric. The animal nose is what holds the bag shut. And if we open it up, this front part is a pocket for putting in our sketchbook and some other arts and crafts items. And then inside, you're going to see we have a pocket with darts for miscellaneous supplies. And then up here is a crayon holder. So all you really need to make this project is a pair of fabric scissors to cut your felt. We also used one of these fancy fabric cutting rollers. You don't necessarily have to have that, but it can make it easier. I have a sewing machine that does buttonholes and zigzag stitch. For this, you'll only need to use the straight stitch. If you have a buttonhole ability, whatever you call that, that would be fantastic just for durability, but you could also do that by hand if you needed to. This whole piece is just straight stitch though, so pretty simple. So we opted for felt because it's pretty easy to use. That gives you a lot of flexibility. There is some wiggle room with this whole pattern, so if you make a mistake, it's really not a huge deal. Also, an issue with fabric is that, dealing with all these seams and having to double up layers of fabric and that making it just that much more work to put the whole thing together. This, you can see the seams and it makes it look cuter, so yay. Also, we try to keep it no more than 3 layers of felt, because at 3 it starts getting tricksy to sew through. So to start it too, you will want at least 3 pieces of your base color, and I think you can squeeze out like some of the other pieces out of that same piece, but we like color contrast. So this one, you can see the pockets are different colors. We got face and ear colors are a bit different, but we didn't specify any of that because you can kind of make it up as you go. Some of our other samples, like we are doing a skunk today, we switched up what colors were being used. So you'll see that as we go along. You also need a couple buttons for the eyes and the nose, and for this little pocket tab here. So here we have all of your pattern pieces cut out. So when you get your file that has the pattern, just go ahead and print that out, and don't use fabric scissors, paper scissors to cut out your pattern. I'm sure you know that. This is our frog hack that you will soon receive, but we're just using it now for the sake of demonstrating each piece that you'll need. So this is a face. You'll need to cut one of these. Some of them that are straight are pretty easy to just you don't even have to pin them. This one I found it easier to pin it. And then you can see on the face piece there's little X's that kind of show you a basic placement for the buttons. If those get moved a little bit, don't worry, you can just eyeball it on your own, but these are for your help. So if such things stress you out, don't stress out. You can figure it out yourself. But we just took some chalk and marked basically where it's going to be. I cheated on my first one and just used a pen even, and the stitching covered it up. So whatever you feel confident in, but chalk disappears. So you can see there we got our where the buttons placement will be marked. So you just need one face. These are the sides of the bag and also the little arms, if you can see the little hands. So you need two of those. This is what those arms are going to attach to. And there's some discussion about how big we are able to have the loop and what's necessary, so we might end up adjusting that. But I think just so there's a little gap in between, I'll just demonstrate right quick. Basically, just to kind of even just show the little paws, give you a little more length of room. Also because this was the full length of the felt, and then we wasn't quite long enough. So voila. This is the interior crown holder, so you just need one. If you would like to mark it, I feel like a pen is easiest with this. There's little marks up on the top. You need about 3/4 inch in between each seam line. So I think it's easiest just to take a pen and hit it right quick. Also with these patterns, I've given you a little over, it's about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And actually, if you just stick around there, that will be sufficient. You got quite a lot of wiggle room. I actually here just kind of cut it in as narrow as I could, so I really almost did 3/8, but that gives you room for movement of the material, so you don't have to get too particular. If it's a little off, you should be fine. The main thing is that it fits all our components. The front pocket, the main thing that it fits our bag, and there should be plenty of room to be able to, or sorry, not our bag, the book, the sketchbook inside. You should have plenty of room, even if you go a little over the 1/4 inch seam allowance mark. The body, you're going to want to cut 3. 2 of these are for that front pocket, 1 is for the back. Brandy has cut her bottom for this interior bag in a nice contrasting color, so we are fans of whatever colors you want to do. Could be a rainbow, crazy fox if you want. Pocket, second pocket. This is another one I'd use, just go ahead and use a pen for, or the chalk, just to kind of approximate it. Again, as long as you're pretty close to where it is, it's not like a dress, so you should be dandy. Oh, it really whistled right there. That kind of marking is helpful, and I'll show you how to do that when we get to that point. Because this is the frog, it's a little bit different, but you're going to cut an outer ear and an inner ear. Here we've turned it into the eyeballs. You will also have a nose piece. In the frog, a different piece becomes the nose piece. The face piece becomes the nose piece, that's what it is. But for the fox, you also have a nose piece. You will want to mark approximately where that buttonhole is, although you can kind of figure that out depending on the size of your button once you get it all assembled. So that might change a little bit. And then this is the tab for the inside, and that inside pocket to hold it closed. Alright, so now we're going to get to work on making our little skunk bag. Again, most of these pieces are the exact same for the fox that you're going to do, but this is an example of a way that you can play around with it, do some different things, and come up with a different animal just through changing the colors even, and adding like 1 or 2 parts. Really, the only part in this that you do not have in that fox pattern is I've made an extra stripe down the nose piece. So you can see I kind of folded this up to kind of cut out a lot of the bulk and make another piece that mirrors that shape. That's the only difference. So if you want to do something like that, I've attached that beforehand. And I've done a little bit of the work beforehand too to just show you the process so that we can skip forward from some of that. This I just stitched right along the edge, about 1/4 inch in, or 3/8 in. So before we attach this front piece to make the to the back to make the pocket, I would say now is a good time to put your buttons on. You can do it later if you want, but this is probably the easiest time to do it. So for the skunk, we have a little pink button nose. And this one is probably the one you do want to make sure is on there really well, because it is what's going to hold the nose down. Alright, now we'll do the eyes. Now we got a little fancy here. You could just have, like with the fox, we just have 1 set of buttons, you can see. But we're gonna get crazy here at the Mac because we have so many buttons, and this is just extra cute. So let me get my needle threaded again. I'm gonna try to do these together. And these, you can see, are just a 2-hole button. Let's put this right here. So, a few more words before we leave the wonderful world of button attaching. Check out how cute, and look, the buttons don't even match. So, go ahead and pull all your mismatched buttons out that you don't use, and you don't have to go crazy trying to find matches. They'll still look adorable. Other thought was, I didn't mention, if you noticed, when I started attaching the buttons, it took a few stabs to find where the hole was because I was starting from the back side. So with your knotted string, because you want to keep your as many loose threads underneath here and not poking out the top as possible, you want to start from underneath. And when you tie your thread off, have the knot stay on the back, just to keep it neater looking. Okay, just details that you might already know, but that I'm going to tell you anyway. Alright, so now we are ready to sew our pocket on. And I guess I'll slide my sewing machine a little more into the limelight. So I just have this set. I can do zigzags and all this crazy stuff, just a straight stitch. I have it set at 5 for width and a 3 for length. You could actually get away with being even bigger than that. So I'd say whatever you know your sewing machine sews best at, that's probably pretty good. You do want to, I'll show you how small the stitches are. These are still pretty small, so you could get a lot bigger than that, but you probably don't want to go too huge, you know, because it's not going to hold it together as well. So I'm just starting at one corner. Also, we are doing a black and white skunk, so white thread works fairly well. And I just decided for ease of use, why not have it contrast with the face? I don't need to have it hidden and be black. But feel free, like you could do hot pink thread, you could do, you know, fun things with color. That would be neat, you know, kids like color. I like color, so I'm just actually lining up the edge with the edge of my presser foot. And it's pretty simple. We straight stitch down. And then I come to the corner and of course I ran out of bobbin thread, so hang on. We're gonna restart this sucker. Okay, so I ran out of bobbin thread. We had to restart. True to form of sewing circumstances. Okay, so I basically have the edge of this lined up with the edge of my presser foot on the inside. So it ends up being about a 1/4 inch. You could even go closer. I'm going to try to show that. When I come to the corner, I'm just putting my needle down, and so it holds my spot, and spinning around to get the next edge across. And like, this is particularly noticeable because I have white on a dark brown. Like, there's some overlap that you'll see, but again, I wouldn't worry about that. If you have some edges that aren't lining up perfectly, just make sure when you're sewing that you get both layers. I'm going to try to show you up close just how this is coming out with the stitching and the edges. So as this isn't, I'm going to try to show up. So I got it a little wider here, and it came in closer, and it's kind of widened out a bit. And you can see on the bottom there's some overlap. But that's all perfectly fine. The main thing is right here, you can see this overlaps a lot. Just making sure that I actually caught the underside in my seam, which it looks like I did on both sides. Right, so that's fine. Like I tend to sew clothing. Some of that might be okay, some of that, depending on the application, might not be okay. And if you're doing really precision quilting, maybe that wouldn't be, but as long as you get the layers together, you're going to be golden. Okay, we got this part done. That's ready to get sewn on. So we're going to work on the back side next. What we're going to do, we're going to get the sides on, which are the 2 little arms. So you're going to need these pieces. And you will need your bottom piece, so this short rectangle. I've already sewn this on, like so that this is our back piece. And the bottom piece, like that. Next, what we're going to do is these sides attached to the back. Let me get my fox again. So you see this flap can just fully open up. So we want our 2 side arms to be attached to our back piece. And you could pin these on. I think what's nice about the felt is it kind of holds in place on its own. Looks like that. Your seam is on the outside. This is kind of on the inside of the bag. You're just going to sew it from there to there and leave yourself a little bit of room because we're going to pull this up and then attach it to the side. So you don't want it to stitch super far down because that's going to give you some lumps. Leave yourself some room. Like this is like 1/8 of an inch, if you noticed here. Clip all my threads. Okay, so I've stitched that. I only have like a teensy bit of space there. Now what we're going to do is lift this up, and we're going to match it up to this side seam right here. You can see that's all the seams are on the outside. So I'm just lining it up so the corner, we can kind of stitch through these corners a little bit. Now Now another thing, I haven't really been backstitching a whole lot. You might want to backstitch on your seams. Just to give it a little extra strength. And in this part too, because it's not specifically measured, like your bag's gonna end here, just make sure it's nice and flat and flush with the back side so that it doesn't bubble up in between, so that it smoothly meets. I'll just backstitch it there for fun. Okay. Alright, so hopefully you can see that I batch stitched a little bit at that seam to keep it strong. I stitched a little bit over this corner of the bottom and the back to get it strong. So that's that side done. Now we'll do the other side. So this one's trickier because we're gonna have to start here, so we'll give the machine should give us a little bit of room to leave that space we want, but we're gonna want to get a little closer. Alright, so again we have that about 1/8 inch to give us some wiggle room to make all of these corners meet. And then the key is not to let it bubble up like this so you end up scrunching it, but to have these sides meet flat. And this time we're gonna sew it from the back. So like, just the way it moves in the machine, you could try to start it from up here and have this arm on the top where you sew, but what could happen then is that this could kind of bunch up. I've been trying to explain it and I don't know that I've been explaining it great. What I mean, but like you could end up with too much fabric down here when you get to the bottom. So what you're going to want to do for this side is just make sure you line it up nice, and we're going to sew it from the back. So the other side I almost feel is a little easier because you're not doing it blind like this, but if you get it all set up, you should be perfectly fine. To double check, take a little pause and make sure everything's lined up just so. Still do my little back stitching. Alright, so now we have the sides of our little bag ready to go. This side looks like I got a little too much thicker on that side, but it'll work out. Now what do we do? Now, what we want to do Alright, next up we are going to apply our ears and apply our nose, because this is going to go over the front flap like this, so we're going to want to sew it right across there. But first let's get our ears in. Like so. I like to just kind of line up where the pink is. That's where this edge meets that edge. It's kind of a nice guideline. That edge meets that edge. They don't overlap. You can see, flip over like that. So it's easiest, I think, just maybe just sew it this way. It's a little less than an inch, a little over a ½ inch in between the edges. So now we've got our ears attached, and now we want to go ahead and get the nose attached. Now you want to do this one first because next we're going to put on our crayon piece, and it's a lot easier, I discovered, if you have this down, and then this is going to go on top of it, so, or with enough room in between so it's not tough to get the crayons in and out. So this is going to, now I'm kind of using, I want to go in about a ½ inch, and I'm kind of using the ear spots where I've attached the ears, that line, on where to line this up. Just kind of making it about the same distance from the edges. So if you want to measure it and make it exact centered, you can. And this is a piece you might want to just pin, because you do want this one to be more centered. The crayon holder. Now, I've run into a slight problem. It looks like I made my seam allowances came in a little bit, but seriously, just trim a little bit, do what I'm doing. Unless you're like super come in a lot, so you might want to use your ruler and make sure you've got the room in here. But I should have left you enough room for such happenstances. So you need about 3/4 of an inch. Even if it's a little less than that, you can get away with it, and I have an extra 1/4 inch on either side. So we can trim this down a little bit to fit within these parameters. And we're just going to want to keep our seam allowance really close to the edge, so that way all the crayons will slide in smoothly and we have enough room for 8 crayons. And before we do that, I'm going to take a pen and I'm just going to mark my crayon intervals, and then you do a straight stitch down, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, so for the inside, we have our pocket with darts and our crayon holder. Behold, so this is what we're doing. The darts seem scary, but they're not. We have this tab to put on with a button, and these straight stitches to sew, so it should be pretty simple. First, I'm going to show you the pocket with the darts. So here's my pattern piece. This shows you about approximate button placement. There's a little wiggle room with that, if you want to play with that. Use a pin, just poke right through. If you have fancy sewing tools, now is the time to whip them out. But I left mine at home, so I'm just poking through this to show me where the top of the dart is. And I'm marking it with my pen underneath. So I'm stabbing through just so I can see on the other side. This part's easier. So this is how wide the darts are going to be. And I'm gonna put a mark in the middle to show where I want to fold it in half. So I'll show you what we'll do. If you're not familiar with darts, I'll show you what we'll do with them. So what I have marked here is, this is where the dart's going to end, and what you do is you taper it off to this point. Because this is just a pocket, if you go a little far beyond that, it will be okay. This shows us how wide the dart's going to be. And what this does is it brings the pocket out a little bit, it gives it a little more depth, so that way you can easily fit a few more things in it without stretching the fabric. So I've marked at each outer edge, and then this center line shows where we're going to fold the fabric in. So what we can do, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up, because actually I'm going to just use this part that I've marked to become the inside of the pocket, and that way we don't even have to worry about covering up these lines. What you're going to do is, at this point, just kind of pin it. And we're folding the fabric in half at this point and at the center point of what we've marked. And then what we're going to do is we are going to start here and sew a little triangle into our fabric. And so this is what I mean by tapering it off at this point. You're going to get closer and closer to the edge, and then try to aim to end it right here. I've left a little thread for me to be able to tie. Alright, so there we got our darts. So it went from this to now it's a little more three-dimensional. And you can see it's tapered in. So this also fits in the size of our bag better. Something you can do also, just to ensure you have enough room, is just kind of place things in there. We want the edge of this to come down a little bit from the edge of the nose so that the crayons can slide in easily. So we may want to actually separate your seam a little bit to see how much room you actually have, and scooch this down pretty close to the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this in, starting here, around the bottom and back up. Take that out. And basically I'm having these bottom corners touch like about where the seam's going to be at of the bottom of the bag, and the two edges of this pouch are at the top, basically touching the edges where the sides are sewn on. So, and I'm keeping my needle on this one, I'm not really giving myself a full 1/4 inch. Okay. And I'm sewing a little bit. I'm going to back stitch this just so the edges of this bag are nice and strong. And then when I get to the top, I am back stitching again to give this corner a little more strength and durability. So this is our tab to close our little pouch. You can see it comes out a little more now. We have those darts in there. Basically, to position it, I'm just going down a little bit into the edge of the bag. So that's about a 1/2 inch down. I might scooch it up a little bit. Basically, I just want to make sure that we have enough room where it can bulge out a bit, but we can also secure it. So just so that if you lay this down, I've got like a 1/4 inch under there. I would stitch through that whole thing twice. So I'm stitching it all the way down, and then I'm reversing it so it's got two layers of stitching. Okay, so on our pattern piece, about a 1/2 inch up for the button. This piece is going to have our buttonhole, and our button's going to live right here. I'm going to just mark right here, since we don't actually have our button. Just put a little dot. Once I pick one out, that'll be where it goes. All right, remember, go from underneath. Right? We don't want to see your knots. We do not want to see your knots. All right, one last stitch. One last stitch. Finishing it off. I'm going to cut a little narrower than the width of this button. So this button is right to there. So we're going to do, I'd say let's do like a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to just mark that right quick with my handy dandy pen. Alright, so that's where we're going to cut our little hole too. And let's see if that's going to go over our button okay. So it looks like that's working pretty well. And then what we're going to do is I still have my needle all threaded from putting on the button. So I'm going to just go from underneath. And I'm just going to reinforce all these edges, especially the corner. So I'm going to do a couple stitches in the corner. So that way the thread takes some of the stress that this is going to receive from being buttoned and unbuttoned. And so hopefully it will last a little longer, not tear as quickly, because this felt's pretty, you know, it's not like tough as nails felt. It's gonna tear eventually, so this is gonna help prolong its life. Brandy, I just sewed the thing together. I'm trying to sew this stupid buttonhole and I just accidentally stitched it together. Oh wait, it came right through. Goodness. Hashtag low budget. Voila, good enough. Beauty of felt is that, hey, that looks homemade, but it looks adorable. So, doobie-doo, it fits. Oh. So, whole case in point, I think I made this buttonhole like a 1/2 inch wide. I know, in fact, I did. And this button is a 1/2 inch plus about a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch larger. So, I mean, we could probably have even made this buttonhole a little smaller. You know, big thing is you don't want it too big. Right? Okay, that part's done. We are so close to finish. So first let's draw on where we need to, our increments for our crayons. Okay. This is the part we're doing, this one up here. Yay! Alright, so as you can see, I'm putting these edges right up against the edge, and I'm gonna have to trim this in a little bit. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pin this in place and just trim this a little bit to fit. And I'm making sure I stay outside of this outer line, because if I get too much further in, I'm gonna run out of room for that first crayon. And the same thing on this side. And I'm just gonna taper it down. Alright, so first what I'm going to do is I am going to come in right real close to the edge, sew down the side, the bottom, and the side, and then I'm going to do the crayon. So now that it's secured, I can pull this out, and then I'm going to just go straight down each of these little partition lines. I'm literally starting right at the top here, shooting straight down, cutting it off, moving over, going to the next one. Alright, so this is what it's going to look like on the back, and that's Dandy. Again, just want to point out, this is not Dandy. I would probably, with more time, rip that out and redo it just because my sewing machine did something funky there. But this actually looks kind of cool. Probably up here. This one I started a little closer to the edge, starting up here. So I would err on the side of starting overlapping onto the background, having it come down. That way the stitching doesn't pull out as much, but not too bad. This could be double stitched up here, I think, just because crayons are going to be coming in and out. Let's test each little pocket to see if it fits. It does stretch a little bit, so. Alright, so there we go. Fits in every little pocket. Yay! This is our interior, and we're almost done. Attach the front to the bottom. We want it to fold out. So literally, this is only getting attached down to the bottom. And then we're going to put the loop to attach his little hands to make a little carrying top. And then we're going to put a buttonhole in his nose. So let me get the bottom put on. You're going to want to, a little unusually, right? Usually we put our seams on the inside, but this one, the seam's going to be on the outside. As with the rest of the bag, but this one part is a lot thicker, so this might be tougher tougher on your machine. I would definitely backstitch these corners. So that got a little crazy in that corner, but you can see it does the job. Okay, last bit. Let's do the arms first. Where did my arm piece go? Here we go. A nice little color contrasting. And this one again, I would double stitch this. We don't want it too high actually, because we don't want the kids to like end up dragging it. So just something that gives just long enough to give it a little carrying handle. So I'm going down maybe an inch from the top finger to the little palm. And what I'm gonna do is actually go in a little bit and sew across the bottom and then just make a little rectangle. So I just sewed, let's see, sewed across here, came up, sewed back across and down to make a rectangle. And then I went ahead and did like a diagonal cross, could do another diagonal cross. I think that's gonna be pretty strong, even without the diagonal, but. And then you're gonna put it on the inside of this palm. So now it looks like his little hands are coming up. And again, I'm going about an inch down from the tip of his finger. And I'm gonna sew the same little rectangle. All right, so we're gonna put it back together.
You want one? Okay.
Let's see how far down his nose goes. And that looks pretty darn cute. Center of the button's like there. Let's measure that. So think about where you want your nose to be positioned. And we want a little bit of this to show. 1, 2, 3. That will put us right here. So right there for our buttonhole center. So that's where the center of a buttonhole will be. And again, we're measuring our button and then downsizing slightly. So this button is 3/4 of an inch wide. So maybe we'll cut a 1/2 inch buttonhole to begin with. Awesome. I can gauge from that. Okay. All right, so we're gonna cut this buttonhole about this wide. You can always make the hole bigger, but I can't do it smaller. So if we need to make this buttonhole larger, we can always do that. So I'm cutting it in that 1/2 inch size and then seeing if it'll fit over. Sometimes just putting it over makes it that much bigger. Right, and so then I think I will just finish this one with my machine. As you can see, it fits nicely over the buttonhole. It's a little tight, maybe I'd make it a little wider. And there's your finished bag. Cute little ears. So again, a slight variation from the fox bag. Not dramatically, we just added a nose stripe, rounded out the ears, did different contrasts of color. Otherwise, these bags are the same. So easily you can do a fox or a skunk.